Story 1. I have a message. Lieutenant Colonel Henry Blake's plane was shot down over the Sea of Japan. Crashed. There were no survivors. Story 2. Littlefoot's mom in the land before time still moves me when I watch it with my children. Story 3. Joyce Summers, Buffy's mother, in the body. It was just so random and normal. She could have died in any number of ways living on the Hellmouth, but it was just an aneurysm. Story 4. Here lies Philip J. Fry, named for his uncle to carry on his spirit. Story 5. Mark Green, emergency room doctor. Brain cancer was the diagnosis for the main character of the show. His death was slow and sad, with at least 3 farewell episodes. His last shift, his friends receiving the letter about his death, and his final days with his daughter in Hawaii. A cry every time. Story 6. Both Sybil and Matthew Crawley's deaths in Downton Abbey, especially Matthew's. Story 7. Shireen Baratheon's death in Game of Thrones and Thomas J. Sennett's death in My Girl. Story 8. Rue from the Hunger Games movie. Tried not to sob in the theater. Story 9. Wallace from The Wire. Bing Bong Inside Out. Hank in Breaking Bad. Story 10. Sophia, Herschel, Beth, Glenn, and all the characters Negan killed in that baseball bat scene from The Walking Dead. Black Widow in Avengers Endgame because she is my favorite female character in the movie. Story 11. When Will Smith's dog died in I Am Legend, I was upset. Story 12. Seymour from Futurama's Jurassic Park episode. Damn it, I choked up writing this. Story 13. Going Mary's death in One Piece made me cry harder than ever for a ship. Story 14. Animated film. Ellie, Up. That opening sequence broke me in half. Anime. Maze Hughes, Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. If that funeral scene did not make you feel feelings, you are not human. Literature. The Dogs, Where the Red Fern Grows. First time a book made me cry. Live-action film. Wash, Serenity. No elaboration needed. Video game. Ares Aerith, Final Fantasy VII. Unforgivable. Honorable mention. Euphemia 6 Britannia. Code Geass. The shocking and tragic circumstances that led to the death of this saintly character had me shaken. Story 15. When Joel's daughter dies in the Last of Us game, it affected me more deeply than I expected. Story 16. Editing to add spoilers for The Last of Us, Joel from The Last of Us. Story 17. Futurama. Fry's dog waits patiently for him to return until the dog dies of old age. Story 18. The death of Wade in Saving Private Ryan. Not so much the death itself, but that his last words after receiving morphine are desperately calling out for his mother. His death is preceded by an earlier, more peaceful scene where he talks about his mother working late as a nurse and often wanting to talk to him when she got home. However, because he was a teenager, he sometimes did not want to be bothered and would pretend to be asleep. Now that he is in a terrible war and could die at any moment, he deeply regrets that. When he tells that story, he is fighting back tears. So when he dies and calls out for his mother, it hits like a hammer. Of course, sometimes dying soldiers calling out for their mothers in war films is criticized as a cliché, implying poor writing, but I strongly disagree. When writing reflects real-life human experiences, it is not a cliché that should be discarded. There are many first-hand accounts of war. Survivors stating that dying men often did exactly that. It makes sense when considering the average age of a soldier, roughly college-aged, with most still unmarried, so the most important woman in their life is still their mother. People think of their loved ones when they are dying. Story 19. I'm a leaf on the wind. Watch how I soar. All these years later, and it still hurts. Story 20. Mordin Solus from Mass Effect and Oberyn Martell from A Song of Ice and Fire. Story 21. Leslie Bridge to Terabithia. Maze Hughes Full Metal Alchemist. Story 22. Old Yeller. I am 60 and saw it when I was a little boy. Cried hard. Story 23. Charlie Pace and Shannon Rutherford from Lost. Glenn Rhee from The Walking Dead. Bobby Singer from Supernatural. Hoban Washburn from Firefly. Opie Winston and Bobby Munson from Sons of Anarchy. Dylan McKay from Beverly Hills 9210. Story 24. Glenn in The Walking Dead. Wash in Firefly. Sirius Black in Harry Potter. I had to reread that section several times to be sure he died. I cried for over an hour. Story 25. Glenn. I said if they killed off Glenn, I would stop watching The Walking Dead, and I did. I haven't seen an episode, bought a comic, or done anything related since Glenn's death. Story 26. When Artax drowned in the swamps of sadness, Atreyu's panicked screams became a core memory for young, impressionable me. Story 27. Tasha Yar from Star Trek, The Next Generation. I saw it when it aired for the first time in 1988, and this was before the internet, so I had no spoilers. I never saw it coming. She was the first main character in Star Trek who died and did not come back. This does not include the alternate universe version of her, who had a different experience. She was not the original Yar. Story 28. When Ginger died in Black Beauty, I cried so hard that my parents had to turn off the movie to calm me down. Story 29. Finally completed Baldur's Gate 3, and Karlaka's engine exploding destroyed me. She specifically takes the time to tell you that she does not want to go back to the Hells, even if it would save her. She just wanted you to be with her when she goes. Knowing I could have saved her if I denied her agency made me sob uncontrollably. Story 30. Winifred Burkle in Angel. It was unexpected and very tragic. I think of it frequently, and I only watched that particular season once when it was broadcast. I am watching the series with my teenager, and we are starting to get close to that episode. Story 31. Tara from Buffy the Vampire Slayer was sudden, unexpected, and heartbreaking. Story 32. Ygritte dying in Jon Snow's arms. I remember having to put the book down for a bit after that. I was not looking forward to seeing it on the television show either. Story 33. The Shoe in Who Framed Roger Rabbit. I am approaching 40, and I still cannot sit through that scene with my eyes open. Story 34. The death of Iron Man, Tony Stark, in Avengers Endgame. Story 35. Asuma Sarutobi in Naruto Shippuden. Just so out of nowhere. Story 36. Howard's death from Better Call Saul was a big shock for me. Story 37. The death of Gwen Stacy in The Amazing Spider-Man 2 was unexpected. I thought Spider-Man would catch her with his web just before she hit the ground, as he usually does. I was also really impressed with the character development of Gwen Stacy compared to other girlfriends of superheroes in other movies. She was smart and interesting for more than just her looks. I assumed there was going to be a third movie, and it was hard to imagine it working well without her. Story 38. Hodder and Shireen. I burst into tears at how awful they both died given how kind and nice they were. Story 39. Littlefoot's mother. As a child, it was horrible to watch. As a mother, it is unbearable to think about. I am crying now. Story 40. Captain Kirk and Generations messed me up pretty good since I had no clue it was going to happen and had been a lifelong Star Trek nerd. Story 41. Ben Sullivan, Brendan Fraser, on Scrubs. Not because his character died, it was truly sad, but because of how his death was revealed and how it affected Dr. Cox, John C. McGinley. An amazing, heartbreaking episode that also features the perfect song for the reveal, Winter, by Joshua Radin. Story 42. The Terminator in Terminator 2. Judgment Day gives the thumbs up at the end. Story 43. John Locke from the television series Lost was the emotional backbone of the cast and the most spiritually connected to the island. Story 44. That female character in Sword Art Online who knew she was going to die and gave the main character an audio log on Christmas before then. Story 45. Spock in Star Trek II. James Evans in Good Times. Coach in Cheers. Story 46. Where's Wallace? Also Omar. The series had some impactful deaths. Story 47. Sweets in Bones. Eddie in Stranger Things. Gideon in Criminal Minds. The Red Wedding in Game of Thrones. Rita in Dexter. Story 48. Hatchie. I could not talk about it without breaking down and sobbing for weeks. Story 49. All the deaths in the last few minutes of the 6 Feet Under finale are just too much all at once. Story 50, Beak in Malazan. On my second read-through and I haven't gotten to it yet. But I know it is there, looming in the distance. It is going to destroy me again. Story 51, Mufasa in The Lion King. George in Grey's Anatomy. Brooks in The Shawshank Redemption. Story 52, Pussy in Orange is the New Black. I felt like we were just getting to know her. I did not watch after that. Story 53, Criminal Minds where Foyt murders Haley. I worked the case. Story 54, Tony Stark in Endgame, The Red Wedding, Logan in Logan, Han Solo, Gwen Stacy in The Amazing Spider-Man 2. Story 55, in high school, playing Final Fantasy VII for the first time, the ancient city defeated me. Story 56, Jiraiya from Naruto. When Naruto is brought a shareable popsicle out of habit and realizes Jiraiya is not there to share it with him, and he silently cries, it has me sobbing every time I watch it. Story 57, George Cooper's death at the end of Young Sheldon affected me deeply. I knew from the beginning of the show that it was bound to happen eventually. Story 58, please boss, do not put that thing over my face. Do not put me in the dark. I am afraid of the dark. Story 59, Kuttner, played by Kal Penn, on House. It was such a shocking death. I know Kal Penn quit the show to work for President Obama in the White House. Story 60, Carl from The Walking Dead made me stop watching the series for a while because his character became one of my favorites in the earlier seasons. Story 61, watched the Berserk 1997 anime and I did not know much about it except that many people said it was brilliant. The eclipse left me astonished. I could not believe that the anime ended there. Story 62, when Adriana was killed on The Sopranos, I had to take a break before starting the next episode. Story 63, Tom Hanks from the movie Saving Private Ryan. He was just a school teacher who wanted to go home. Story 64, Lane Price in Mad Men. That really upset me for the whole day when I saw that. Story 65, Mothra in the Godzilla movie. I know she is reborn each time she reincarnates, but her demise was very emotional for me. Also, the dinosaur in the last Jurassic World movie when they were moving away from the island as the volcano was flooding the land. Story 66, Ben from Scrubs. When Dr. Cox realizes what is going on, man, as soon as I realize when it is on this episode, I have to mentally prepare myself. Story 67, John Coffey in The Green Mile. Knowing he never raped and killed those 2 little girls but was being executed for it hit me very hard. Story 68, Richard Harrow from Boardwalk Empire. I know the quality of the show declined a bit for me, but I have never rooted for a character to make it through to the end. A disfigured World War I veteran who just wanted a normal life and he was so close. One last job before he was going to leave behind the crime business, and he kills the wrong person, ending mortally wounded underneath the Atlantic City boardwalk. That last vision before he succumbs is just too sad. Story 69, Lucy on Emergency Room still gives me a knot in my stomach when I think about it. Story 70, Yondu's funeral in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. My own father had recently passed, and I was a mess. Father and son playing Rockets They Came. Kraglin's cry of surprise, pride, and defiance. I wanted to scream at the universe with him. Story 71, Omar from The Wire had a very straightforward death, just like in real life. Ragnar Lothbrok from Vikings was another. Story 72, most traumatic for me was probably Sweet's death in the television show Bones. Caught me so off guard that I actually had to stop watching the show after that. I just couldn't bring myself to watch again. It was so upsetting to me. Most heartbreaking was probably like Delfino in Desperate Housewives. I had just lost one of my closest friends around that same time, so I really felt that one. I sobbed through the entire funeral episode. Story 73. It was in an episode of The Sandman, The Sound of Her Wings, when Morpheus is accompanying his sister, Death. They visit a mother and her baby. I was a new mother when that episode aired. I had a full anxiety attack once I understood what was happening. I have not watched the show since then. Story 74. Han Solo actually depressed me for about a month in 2015. Then the death of Star Wars affected me even more profoundly. Story 75. The horse in the never-ending story or any dog that dies in a movie. Sorry, but humans are not my thing, apparently. Story 76. How has no one mentioned Bridge to Terabithia? Is it just me? Story 77. Hedwig's death in the book was awful. I liked that she got to fight back in the movie at least. Story 78. Harry Potter when Albus Dumbledore dies. I have seen the movie many times, and I cry every time. Story 79. I loved Good Times when I was a kid. I loved it. When the father, James, died, I was so upset I thought the actor had died in real life. I was 7. Story 80. Duala's suicide in Battlestar. I had to replay it immediately. My brain would not accept it. Story 81. Fry's dog from Futurama. Saddest moment in television ever. Story 82. Watched my girl as a kid. Mac's character dying was the first time I cried in a movie. Piggy in Lord of the Flies being killed was the most shocking and eye-opening thing I had ever seen in a movie as a kid. Story 83. Sambuca Kelly in Waterloo Road, Season 7, Episode 6. I sobbed for half an hour afterwards. Story 84. Tara from Buffy the Vampire Slayer was a sweet angel who deserved so much better. Story 85. Rewatching Breaking Bad, Hank Schrader's death always affects me deeply. Story 86. Leslie Burke, The Bridge to Terabithia. It was shocking. Story 87. Brooks in Shawshank Redemption. John Coffey in The Green Mile. Marley in Marley and Me. Story 88. Alright, like -1% of people in the world have seen this. But Lewis's death in Last Man on Earth was both shocking and comical. I was not prepared. Was not ready. A minor character in a wildly underrated television show. Can I get a fart 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 in the comments in honor of our now deceased gay population? Story 89. The wife in the movie Up. Very wet eyes for a grown man. Heartbreaking. Story 90. The chicken in Mobile Army Surgical Hospital was never the same after that episode. It was one of the most emotional moments I can remember in my life. Anyone who does not mention the chicken has not seen Mobile Army Surgical Hospital. Story 91. Opie from Sons of Anarchy. I was very upset and stopped watching for over a month. Story 92. Optimus Prime. I was so young and I hated Hot Rod afterward, or should I say Rodimus Prime. Pussy. Story 93. Mark and Lexi in Grey's Anatomy never cried so hard through several episodes. Story 94. Kate on NCIS. It was back in the early days, and it was my comfort show after work on television. Due to my schedule, I didn't see any advertisements for the episode, which apparently heavily implied someone would die. I got home, settled down to watch one of my favorite shows with characters I actually liked, and then, bang. But she's wearing a vest. Haha, they got me good. For a second there, I really believed it. Bang. Headshot. I was shocked. Matthew Riley is one of my favorite authors. His books are a lot of fun most of the time, and in Scarecrow, a main character who has been in about 4 novels so far suddenly dies. I literally reread the page about 6 times, threw the book down and paced the house. In absolute disbelief. After that, I genuinely feared even the main character's safety. Ultimately, the characters you're following are all theoretically competent enough to do what needs to be done. After that one death, I suddenly realized literally no one was safe. That's why I've never tried to read or watch Game of Thrones. I've heard main characters get killed left and right, and after Scarecrow, I don't have the desire to go through that again. The medic Wade in Saving Private Ryan knows he has been liver shot and will die. He is briefly panicked. Then they ask him what to do. There is a pause, and he, knowing his wound is fatal, shakily says, "I could use a little more morphine." They all just understand. He's asking to go out quickly and hopefully more comfortably than in agony as he bleeds out in the mud. The show SEAL team, Clay gets wounded, loses a leg, struggles to find meaning after being a SEAL, and ends up helping a veteran with issues. When he talks the other guy out of doing something stupid with a gun, a random security guard happens upon them, sees Clay holding the gun that he had just gotten the other veteran to give up, and shoots him dead on the spot. Senseless, sudden, and absolutely preventable, but also completely believable. I was upset for days about it. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.